Welcome back. In this video we're going to look at function calls. So the next couple of videos we're going to be looking at functions, and the first place to start is looking back at some of the stuff we've been doing already, because we've actually been using functions quite a lot, even if you didn't realize it. So in this little bit of code here, you'll notice that we've got this include standard input output, and this here gives us access to functions that allow us to get stuff in from the keyboard and stuff out via the monitor. So this here is really important for doing those operations, because without it we would not be able to do this line, we wouldn't be able to do this line, and we wouldn't be able to do this line. We'd only be able to use the primitive concepts that we've learned so far. And so we could have things like car input, and we can have arithmetic operations and ifs and fors and all that. But we wouldn't be able to use things like print and get and scanf and so on. So this here gives us access to functions. And these functions, if you go and have a look at them, just look like code. Some of them are going to be very complex, and they're going to be more advanced than what we've done so far, but that doesn't matter because you can still use them. So the first reason that we can use functions is it allows you an ability to use advanced concepts without understanding those advanced concepts. You just need the interface for them. So for example, printf, if you go and have a look at the code for that, it may be full of stuff you've never seen before, but you don't need to care about that. You just need to know how to interface with it, what information to give it, and it will give you some output. So you can think of a function like a black box where you pass a number of things in and you can get stuff out. What happens inside doesn't really matter to you at this stage. So this is the first reason that we're going to use functions. The second thing here, you'll notice that if we were to write printf ourselves and we just put in a big bunch of code that output to the screen, we do that here and we do that here. So we'd have to copy and paste all of that code and do it again down here. So by using functions, we don't need to write that code out multiple times. Rather, we just write it out once and then we can call it. So we've had a look at printf, getCar, scanf, all of these functions already, and you would have noticed two things about them. They can accept inputs, okay? And the inputs are separated by a comma, and we call these inputs arguments to the function. So here you'll notice there's no comma, so we've only got one argument. Here you'll notice that we've got two arguments. Here you'll notice that we've got 0 arguments. So depending on the function, we may be able to pass in multiple arguments. We may only be allowed to pass in one argument. And it depends on the function and its purpose, how many arguments you need to pass. So for example, if you had a function that added up 2 numbers, then you'd only need 2 arguments, and you'd enforce that. So you would say you have to put in 2 arguments. Printf's a little special in that it can accept a number of arguments, and we'll look at that very late in the subject at how to do that ourselves. But for most of the functions we're going to be creating, we're going to require a certain amount of arguments. Now the other thing is that some of our functions will actually return something, okay? And you can see that here, okay? So you can see that this getCar returns a value, okay? It gets evaluated, and then it gets stored in here. Now, some functions will return nothing, and some functions will return something. Now, it's up to you if you want to store that or not. we've seen before that we can put a getChar on a line by itself. It returns something, but we just don't store it. Printf also returns something if you're interested in that, but most of the time we don't store that value because it's not very useful for what we're doing. So here, understand that we've got arguments, we've got values returned, and we've got some code inside there that when using standard input-output, we don't really need to know what's inside there. When we're making our own functions, we will need to know what's inside there, but if you're using someone else's functions, or you're using a library, you don't need to know what's in there, you just need to know what to pass in, what to get out, and a little bit of what it does so that you get the right output. Alright, so that's an introduction to function calls, and we'll look at functions in a bit more detail over the next couple of videos. Thank you.